is top of the hour, so we'll go ahead and get started. And yes, so right now with the poll questions, we do have 15% of you saying that you are breaking into the industry. You're a student, you're considering AML. So to me, that means you're either a very junior role or you don't have the AML in your title yet. Less than 5%, that is about 40% of you, or sorry, less than 5 years experience, that's about 40% of you, so that is the majority. 24% of you are saying 6 to 10 years, and 23% of you are saying 11 plus years. So welcome to everyone, and I do hope you find today's topic and discussion interesting and helpful. So just going through some of the you have shared how long you've been in it. So yeah, so somebody here is also saying they started compliance in 2021, so less than 5 years. They were an assistant compliance officer, they've been a teacher, and they're really enjoying it. So that's fantastic. Welcome. And somebody else is baking industry for 12 years, but they just started in the compliance a year ago. So they find it interesting, lots to learn. Definitely comes with challenges. And yes, that there's that thin line between that customer service and compliance. And you bring up a very good point, because we will be talking about that, compliance and client expectations. So that is a hard one to balance. Somebody else they were at the FIU, Financial Intelligence Unit, went into central banking and now a manager at a bank. Yeah, it's challenging on the private side. And that's something I haven't, don't have on the agenda, but that move from the regulatory government side into the private industry is a challenge. The few people that I have known who have done that, made that change, have said that they have a lot more empathy now for the compliance officer in the private industry side of things. So yeah, and keeping abreast with the new skills that are needed, especially with AI, that is very, very true. It's very hard, very difficult for many. Yeah, we've got somebody else who started in compliance in 2012, so that's over 10 years in banking. Then moved industries and AML certified. Yeah, it's definitely changed a lot over the few years. Okay, so we'll go ahead and close this poll. I'm going to close that poll, Tom. Oh, there you go. Perfect. Thank you. And we'll go ahead and get started here. So again, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Kimberly Smith. I was a compliance officer in MLRO. I worked in Cayman and London. That's where I kind of cut my teeth. I then started, when I left the AML role and returned to the States, I was asking myself, because I was going through a transition, and I was kind of asking myself, what do I want to do next? And the answer I came up with was I wanted to create a software system, a technology to help people who did my job, the AML compliance officer. I specifically worked in the trust and corporate services aspect of fiduciary services. I was not in banking, so transaction monitoring was not one of my obligations or focus at the time. And I started Silo. So I moved into the tech industry, but the AML tech side of things, and have learned a lot since as well. And sorry, I was just kind of looking at, somebody says they can't hear me, but yeah, they will have to, Tom, if you can handle that one, please. So the AML background or the experience that you have can transition to many different industries and other jobs. So for those of you who are kind of feeling the burnout with your current job, then stay on. Hopefully we can chat a bit about how you can move into technology. There's so much you can do with the AML career or with the AML experience. So before we do begin, again, this is not legal advice. I'm not a lawyer. It should last about an hour. We will go ahead and give certificates of attendance to all live broadcast attendees only. Use the question box again to post your comments and questions. And today specifically, your engagement is needed. I do not have a panel. I do not have anybody else joining me today. And so really this is about, excuse me, our conversation, your questions, your thoughts as well, your experiences. Please do share. And I will treat your thoughts and ideas as anonymous. And of course, we will have the recording and slides available as well. So those will go on our website. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about, I'm going to start with the burnout and how to deal with that burnout for those of you who are a bit overwhelmed. Because even if you're new and you're loving it, you are going to face burnout at some point. Your career considerations, some strategies for sustainability, maybe even some transitions, things, ways you can kind of either reframe or approach that aspect of when you reach it, should you reach it, or if you're in that stage now. The other aspect I wanted to talk about was what I call the role expansion challenge. Your title has the word compliance in it, and that means often that you get all things compliance, not just AML. And we'll discuss that and how that impacts the role. The AML role reality, what is it that we actually do? I have a wonderful story when my daughter was young. She was about 6, and at that time she could not comprehend what's an AML compliance officer. It's not like a firefighter. It's not like a police officer or a doctor or a nurse, where you have a uniform, and it was very hard for her to grasp that. And I had to take her to work one day, and I was doing training for onboarding a new employee and giving them the AML awareness, AML training for onboarding of new staff. And she got to listen in at the age of 6, and there she was sitting in the corner with her coloring book and being very good. And at the end of that 2-hour training session I had to do, she said, I now understand what it is you do. And I said, what is it? And she says, you're a baddie detective. And I thought that was such a sweet kind of, she kind of put my job into a way that she understood, and she called me a baddie detective, because that's exactly, and I was like, that's exactly what it is. I'm looking for the bad guys. I'm trying to make sure that we're not helping the bad guys. So if you have small children and you need to explain to them what you do, that's what you do. But it's way more than that too. We're not just looking for the bad guys, and we'll go into that role reality. Then we'll discuss the skills that are required, including new skills that are required, and then the certification investment. Okay, all right, so let's talk about burnout, because I think many in the industry, especially those of you who have been in it for 10 or plus years, the feedback I get when I speak to people openly is that they are facing burnout. Why is it? I think we all know it is a high pressure environment. It's just a constant scrutiny. It's a constant pressure. And now we're getting more and more personal liability rolled into the job as well. If you don't do it right, you can, you've got some issues that you might have to deal with. The volume and the complexity of the job, it's just more and more and more every single year. But then we also have the resource constraints. We're doing more with less. We maybe don't have all the right technologies that we need that can help with automation or help with the managing of all of the information that you have to do. You have competing priorities, you have tight deadlines. It's also can be repetitive, very repetitive, depending on exactly what it is you're doing. The emotional toll, too, for some, when you are dealing with potential criminal activity, it can, if you do have those cases, thankfully, I've never really had anything like that. It was that I know of, but I'm sure it has that emotional toll. Just constantly learning about it as well, having to be aware of the new trends. It is just a lot of learning. It's a lot of change. It's a lot of trying to keep up, keep up, keep up. And that is where the burnout can come. The other thing I've noticed is that we don't get that many dopamine hits. We rarely get a sense of completion, that job well done. And this is especially true in the digital age, I think, because we cannot see the work. People walk into our offices or see us working, and they just see us on a laptop. They don't see 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when before everything was digital, people could see the big piles on my desk. And they from those piles, they could see, that's a heavy workload. And then whenever a particular case or matter was done, you picked up that pile, you boxed it up, and you sent it out. So I called that a dopamine hit. I had a sense of completion. We don't get that anymore. Our inboxes are probably, I won't share how many number of emails I have in my inbox. It's just you open up that inbox and it's just chaos. I'm trying to constantly prioritize what is needed. So, and I'm sure many of you are in that area or in that kind of, you experience that. So how do we deal with this? It's not like we can just quit our jobs, go away. We have realities of mortgages and children and, groceries and bills to pay. So this is where the resilience is key. And resilience is not just going on and just keeping, how can I say, you just keep going on without asking for help or anything like that. Resilience is what I call, it's that space in between. And I think this is when I heard this concept for the first time, it made so much sense for me. It's that space between the awareness of not knowing and knowing, and yet still kind of going in. Everything's changing. That all the little challenges and these little dots in that box, those are the different challenges that you're trying to navigate and find these solutions to. So let's say, as an example, in the AML space, some new regulations come, or a new directive, or new AML directive in Europe. Maybe FATCA releases some new guidelines or some new notes or something like that, or a new report. And you don't know how that's going to affect your business. You don't know how that's going to affect your client portfolio or how it's going to affect your policies and procedures. So that resilience is going through in this white box here. It's navigating and saying, okay, first of all, I've got to read this report or read this new policy change or read this new regulation and find out what's changing for us. And then you're looking at it from your industry and your company, and you have to make your changes to your policies and procedures documents. You might have to make changes to your technology and make some configuration changes. You might have to train people, your staff. You may have to report to the board, let them know. You're going through this process of what in this white box until you get to the knowing stage. And that resilience is that keeping going. That's what resilience really is. You don't necessarily have the exact, this is what's going to happen and where we're going to be in a month's time or 6 months time or a year time, but you're going through that process to find out where you need to, what problems do you need to solve, or what projects do you need to implement to get to an end destination. So that's that a resilient stage. I heard a great phrase, ignorance is bliss, but it's not a business plan. So not keeping abreast of regulatory changes and new trends and reports and expectations, regulatory expectations, We do absolutely have to stay on top of that, but that's still at the very beginning stage right here. You then have to become aware, all right, these are the issues, and I need to start somewhere. And that is the hard part, is where to start. And what, again, you don't have to necessarily have it all figured out before you start. Some people think they have to, you don't. Sometimes just get started and read through and then break it down. And again, you're going to be in this in-between space a lot in this career. That is the most challenging aspect, I think, for many people, is that if you're in this in-between space, this is your career, and this is where the challenges are, but it's also where the growth happens. It's also where the learning happens. And you just have to stay committed to keep moving. And if you thrive in the end of being the person who always knows the answer, you're rarely going to be in the knowing stage. You're almost always 90% of your job is going to be in this, what I call the growth stage, or the in-between space. You have to value that, I think, to enjoy this job. And I think that's the area where I do thrive, is in this in-between stage, because I do enjoy learning and trying new things. And, it's just, I like a good challenge. And once that challenge is over, then I get bored and I look for a new challenge. So if you like that challenge, if you like that learning and researching and reviewing and talking to people and exploring ideas, this is definitely the career for you. All right, I'm going to pause here for a second because I've got a few people who, and I have asked for this, so I'm going to definitely look at all these questions, or not questions, but comments that people are posting. Yeah, one person is writing, yes, they're definitely experiencing burnout. They are experiencing burnout from lack of management support, and I do hear that a lot. The manual nature of tasks, no systems involved, yeah, constant audits that are brutal. And I agree, they do feel like it is just, they're fighting, it's almost like they want to just knock you down constantly. I do get that. I hear that a lot. Yeah, you're
The same
fighting
person,
versus,
the same
sorry.
person also commented, "It feels good to rant a bit. I hope I feel rejuvenated by the end of this webinar."
I do too, yes.
We hope you do
And
too.
yeah, and some of these rants, I mean, said you're not the only one. I hear this a lot. I've actually heard somebody say that they feel like the regulator is trying to put them out of business. And um, I had to kind of pause. I was like, wow, I had never seen it that brutal. Um, or, heard somebody put it that way, but I mean, it was like, wait, are they? Are they trying to put us out of business? Um, But yeah, no, if you feel like you're fighting on all sides, you are, because you're having to defend your decisions, not just to the regulator, but to your clients, to your board, to the business units, to the revenue generating, lines. Um, yeah, you do, and it is tough. So yeah, the deadlines, it is, yeah, feel free to rant, because you're not the only one there. I appreciate that. Um, does it get better or at least easier? And, ooh, that's a tough one. I'll tell you what, I'll let you tell me at the end of this. Um, where to start is a challenge. Somebody else writes that. That is, and again, I hope I can help you by the end of the day, help you know. Um, yeah, I do hope everybody gets some insights, and yeah, you're not alone. Um, yeah, you're not going in circles. That's everybody does feel these challenges. So I do hope we can help you out today. So what is resilience? Okay, resilience is not pretending everything is fine. I think what you guys are commenting on today and sharing today with this is absolutely acceptable. Everything is not fine. More work, more work, more work. You can break. And not needing or asking for support. If you need help, if you need support, you need it. You have to ask for it. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get it, and we'll talk about that. But that is, yeah, you resilience is not pretending that you always have the answers, that you're not invulnerable. You do experience setbacks, but what it is just a little bit of movement. If you can just take that next step today, even if you can't see the final destination, that is resilience, any kind of progressive movement. Um, Support. Again, sometimes you don't necessarily get all the resources. We are not a revenue generating business unit, therefore we often do not get as much resources that we need. And when I talk about that, I'm talking about, like, the additional staff support, additional, technology support. Um, we are the unwanted stepchild, I think, of the business, but this is our role, and sometimes we do have to just kind of find a way to get what we need and convince management. I love this phrase, fail fast. And I learned it for the first time when I got into the technology side, because you're not in the AML regulatory space. We're not allowed to fail. If our bosses and management heard us say, we're going to fail fast, they think, no, you're compliance. You don't have, failure is not an option. What I mean by that is experimenting, feeling free to try something and then adjust it if you need to. Pivot is what they call it, in the technology world. And when I talk about this, sometimes I'm specifically thinking in terms of workflow. Who does what? Set it out, write it down, work with your colleagues to say, okay, you're sending the onboarding form, then what? And then it comes to me. I do this, I do that. You're doing these workflows. And if you write them down, then oftentimes you can see where there's duplication of effort, or where our job responsibilities are very unclear. So, and if you want to try a new way of doing things, then try it and give it a month or two. And then if it doesn't work, or revisit it, and then fine, let's adjust it and try something else. I think in compliance, we have a tendency to say, these are the steps we take, and then we stick with those steps for years and years and years. And we're not allowed to kind of experiment and try new things. Usually that's might be because of budgets and stuff like that, but as far as technology is concerned. But feel free to try and experiment. And if that experiment fails, it's not a failure. It was just, okay, we learned it didn't work that way. Let's try it another way. And resilience is also that, what I call purposeful persistence. You believe in the value of reaching the other side. You believe in the value of what you're doing. You are protecting your company, you're protecting your industry, you're protecting your country's financial system and reputation. And as long as you have that value mindset, why are you doing this? Then you can get through and continue with the resilience. Or you simply enjoy the journey of learning. I love the journey of learning. And that is, again, the reason why I do know from my own experience that I excel in this area, constantly learning and, having new challenges. So it is, as long as if you enjoy that, you're going to excel really well. Okay, so I'm going to look more at some of the contents again. I mean, some of the careers, the comments we have. Yeah, so somebody else is looking at re-entering the compliance field. Oh, I hope I don't change your mind. So after today, talking about all the different challenges. Yeah, so we do need really good people. So if you're looking to re-enter, this is great. Somebody's asking, what advice or tips would you give to address keeping up with the challenging? Yeah, it is. yeah, it's overwhelming. And unfortunately, there's other aspects you need to um, consider with this kind of that kind of question. How do you keep up? And I do have some tips. One of them is going to be use these LLMs, the Chat GPTs, the Claude. That has helped me a lot with guardrails, though. I always want to say if you're going to be using these AI tools, it has implications, and you need to be very careful. It's not total reliance. Yeah, and somebody else, they said that the pressure the compliance departments face is dependent on the level of regulatory pressure being applied. And I see a cycle in that. It's like for a few years, everybody's just feeling intense pressure, and then it seems to lay off for a couple years, and then the intense pressure comes back on. So it's dealing with that kind of pressure periodically is very important. Okay, so career considerations. If you are looking at the AML career, if you're been in this space for a while and you're asking yourself, is it the right career for me? Is it, if you're in a situation where you're not sure if the career itself is you, ask yourself, reframe that question. Is it the job or is it the company? Is the company a size fit? Is it a values fit? I experienced this myself. I worked for a company when I first started there. It was just, two offices, and I think we had less than 500 people. I loved it. It was brilliant. As the years went on, the company got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually, I did not feel like I fit anymore. So, what I came to realize is it wasn't the job that I was doing, it was the company had changed. It got too big. It became very, very corporate. And that's fine. Some people love the corporate job because you've got lots of written policies and procedures and standard operating procedures, and everything's very well written and um, written down who does what, and they fit very well in that role. I again am I like the challenges. I like the not knowing. If you gave me a role and said you're going to do this and you're going to do it step by step by step, I would be bored in no time. And it would, but if you said, okay, we've got this problem, we want you to go and fix it, that's where I that's where I excel. Another aspect you want to ask is it a values fit? Do they, because you might have different values, and I don't want to go into what values are or anything, but just ask yourself, are you a values fit with that particular company or that industry? And it could be that you're not. So these are some things that you might have to answer and ask yourself. And there's no right or wrong answer. It's just what fits you. The next consideration is what stage of life are you currently experiencing? Tom, you just had a baby. So you've seen in the past 2 months how huge of a change that is to your life. So lack of sleep, you're now having to adjust to uh, being able to read the signs of this living thing that can't speak yet. So you're going through all this like, oh, are they uncomfortable? Are they hurting? They're crying. Something's wrong. What is it? So that's a huge change. And for people who are going through these life experiences, raising children, new babies, aging parents, are you in this sandwich, what I call the sandwich generation, where you're taking care of children and aging parents? You've got that's a huge step in the life. Are you going through a divorce? um, do you have any illness or health issues? So as you get older, I'm 56 years old. As I'm getting older, I have to be a lot more conscious of my health and um, eating right and not overworking. As for some of you, I was actually just off work for 2 weeks um, on a medical leave because I was quote unquote fine one day and then the next day out. Um, and due to I have an autoimmune disease, so I have to be very, very careful because if I'm not careful, it knocks me out. Um, if if I don't eat right and get all the right health aspects in. So you may also be experiencing these. So this is where, and I'm not saying, if you're going through any of this, AML is not the right career, but you're going to have to juggle those life experiences. And of course, life throws us, pulls a rug out from under us many times in our lifetime. And so you do have to be able to balance that. Then there's also the growth opportunities. Is I think AML career has fantastic growth opportunities, especially in today's new technology advances and changes that are going on. I think if you've got that kind of mindset and you like a good challenge, that AML career can definitely take you into new industries and new roles, even if it doesn't have the AML compliance officer title in it. I'm thinking particularly like, if you're looking at leadership roles, for those of you who have been in it for many years, you could be, sit on a board of directors because, boards are looking for people with AML compliance experience so they have that experience on the board. Again, technology as well. Trying to think some of the other, if you've got any, consulting, obviously, if you've kind of been in the private industry or even in government and you want to move into consulting, if you are thinking about starting a consulting career, that itself has many challenges. Or if you're going to start your own business in AML space, uh, you're going to learn because it's got everything from starting a business, you've got your cash flow, marketing, payroll. I mean, you've got a lot of things to consider, and that in itself is a completely different topic and webinar itself. Strategies for sustainability. All right, so this kind of goes to how do we keep up? All right, well, this particular slide, we're really talking about the kind of the big picture strategies, uh, such as maybe going into what you call specialization. Like, are you really good at writing policies? Are you really good at training, public speaking? Are you good at the consulting or technology aspect? Do you get technology? Then that's where you can kind of go into more into just what I call specialization. Are you good at sanctions, proliferation financing? Are you good at the investigation? What do you enjoy the most? And consider specializing in a particular area that you really enjoy. The industry mobility, of course, obviously with AML skills, I've said this before, you could go into just about any industry. If you're in insurance and you don't like insurance, but you want to be more going into crypto, you can move into crypto. Um, the only thing I personally like the what I call the fiduciary services business lines. I enjoy that area. I would not want to get into the banking side personally. I said to me, transaction monitoring and all the rules with banking would be just a bit too much for me. And so I total respect for those of you who are on the banking side, because I think that's got that has a less wiggle room. So that is how I like to approach it than the fiduciary services side. Leadership opportunities, again, are you a good manager of people? I'm not. Give me a research project. And set me in a dark room, with that new regulation or that research. I'm fantastic. I will come out with the answer 3 days later. When it comes to managing teams, though, terrible. Leading projects, I can kind of, write them all down. That's great. So can you lead a project? Can you break that project up into little projects and move it forward? Do you have that skill set? Can you become a subject matter expert? We have many subject matter experts on AML Gray Matters webinars. We've discussed all the cryptocurrency. We discussed, Interpol. We had, FBI agents, our Homeland Security agents, speak to us about different, trafficking, human trafficking, drug trafficking, things like that. So if you like a particular subject that is a subset of AML compliance, you can become a leader and become that subject matter expert in your industry. Work-life balance, of course, is hard for everybody. You do need to leverage technology to have more efficiency, automation. You do need to take time off, and this is definitely a do as I say, not as I do, and set boundaries. I actually had a wonderful conversation with somebody who was considering MLRO role, and the first thing I said was, for how many companies? And it was going to be X amount. And I said, well, and then in a year from now, how many companies will you be the MLRO for? And it was going to be, double that. And explain to them it's to just be given more and more and more companies to be the MLRO of, that's the Money Laundering Reporting Officer role. It's going to be unsustainable after so many years. So, we kind of brainstormed, how could he set some boundaries and also make sure it benefited him financially, i.e. salary discussions, as opposed to, just providing the service and then the company just making all these fees. So you do need to set some boundaries. There is also the aspect of the AML compliance role very soon becomes compliance. And then you are responsible for GDPR compliance, cybersecurity compliance, FATCA CRS, tax reporting compliance. Suddenly all these become under your role as these bigger regulations come into play. Now it kind of makes sense because many of them rely on the same due diligence to comply with FATCA CRS as an example. Even GDPR, that's what I call our consent management. You're trying to make sure, do we have all the consent in places and documented? So in one sense it makes sense, but I'm not a GDPR, data privacy officer by any means. I'm an AML compliance officer. So this is where management, I hope some people in management are listening in. You have to understand that just because they overlap a little bit doesn't mean that I, as an AML compliance officer, have the skill set or the bandwidth to handle GDPR, cybersecurity, FATCA CRS. These just keep getting put on the compliance officer because people forget AML compliance is not GDPR compliance and things like that. Okay, I am going to pause a second. Somebody is asking, they say they've been very concerned about the sustainability of this career path. Okay, so she writes, it seems to have emerged in response to recent demands and may potentially disappear within a few years. Interesting that you say that. I think that's interesting that you say you think it could disappear. I don't think it's going to disappear, and I'd like to know why you think it's going to disappear, if you don't mind kind of reposting on that. Somebody says they are with a consulting firm, they're an outsourced CCO, Chief Compliance Officer, and BSA AML. Yeah, in FinTech, and it's a lot of work. Yeah, still learning, managing a team. Yeah, if you've got that management skill set and mindset and you can manage a team, fantastic. Unfortunately, I don't have that skill set. I wish I did. Somebody else writes, they're a deputy compliance and data privacy. Yeah, big roles, very time consuming. and I'm not sure how long I can keep doing both. That is the key. It is you you do need to say this is too much. And you do need to make that very, very clear to your senior management, to your board. I cannot do both. And we're going to go into what I call the role expansion later. Professional development, of course, to sustain in this role, you do have to be constantly learning, networking, career planning. Okay, so, and of course, you could do that through the conferences, through compliance associations, lots of different ways. All right, so this is that role expansion challenge. And this is where that setting the boundaries comes into play, knowing that all things, all regulatory knowledge, compliance is compliance. It is having that skill set of being able to read the regs, read the guidance, read the policies, read the reports. That's just step one. Being able to implement then all these new regulatory requirements, because you're not just rewriting policies, you're having to reconfigure systems, you're having to reassign roles, you're working with your human resources, the job definitions, who does what again. It's documentation, that consent management with data retention, protection, privacy, tax reporting. Especially in our space, I don't think many of you maybe, I work with everybody else, a lot of people in the Caribbean, small islands, small jurisdictions, but what I call the international financial center space. But what we're doing is we're dealing with people from all over the world, and we're dealing with people from Asia, India, Africa, the U.S. obviously, the EU, Middle East. We're having to constantly learn about cultural differences, taxation differences, and that's huge. What we have to know. Think about the country. Just doing a country risk assessment, and putting into place your country risk system or methodologies. That alone is just a very small part, and yet look at how much you have to know about corruption and bribery in certain areas of the world, terrorist financing, proliferation financing, world conflicts. Just keeping up with that is a lot. So if you are working and you're doing these other roles as well, economic substance, vendor management, information security, data retention, GDPR compliance, there's going to be a breaking point, and that you cannot keep up with it all. And your board is going to have to help you, or your senior management are going to have to give you those resources. Now, this is where technology can help. And I talk about AI a lot. I use AI. You can't see on my tabs, but I have Claude, Gemini, and ChatGPT open in my tabs right now. I use all three. Because I have learned that each one is Claude is better at more creative thinking than ChatGPT in my experience. ChatGPT, I can give it a reg and say, show me the changes, and it can do that really well. I can give it a report and say, bullet point, basically give me the facts from this document. Claude and Gemini, I find it's more helpful if I'm trying to explore ideas. Somebody's asking me to give those names. It's ChatGPT, is Claude. I think it's just Claude. That's CLAUDE.ai, and the other one is Gemini. I've had other people say they use Copilot in Microsoft that they also really like. I haven't explored that one. Again, safety, be careful. This is not, you do not put client data or confidential data into any of these platforms. All that information is shared, so do not put client information in it. Only publicly available information in these tools. there was one other thing I heard yesterday um, through Instagram, I might say. Somebody posted a thing, something about Google, or I can't. It's some uh, legal case here in the U.S. Apparently, these an AI platform have been told that they have to produce all prompts, and a prompt is like if I go in and say, "Hey, here is a new regulation. Give me the changes from the last version of the regulation." That's a prompt. Um, or tell me about terrorist financing. That's a prompt. That's these are so they've been at. I probably prompt 100 times a day across these tools. So I don't know how the court is expecting any technology company to provide that, and who's going to read it all. But they did say so. Even your prompts are not private. Um, yeah, somebody else is writing. Yeah, it's far too much for one person, and it is. It is. If you're a really small company, uh, and all of this falls under your remit now, it is a lot. Um, and this is where I do think the true risk is if you're a company and you've got one person that is all things compliance, and they're dealing with all of this, then you're going to have to help them. They've got to have either a consulting firm that you bring in to help with the FATCA CRS, because there's a lot of nuances there. You might need somebody else to, put the vendor management, risk management under IT teams for, um, information and security and cybersecurity. Put that under technical. Spread it out a little bit, because to have one person doing AML and the data protection and the beneficial ownership and all this, it is just too much. They do need help, or something's going to go wrong, and it's not the person who did it when you've overloaded them with so much. Yeah, sorry. A lot of people are saying thank you for even saying this, but it is. I think if people aren't saying it, it really does need to be said. Um, so yeah, so people are saying that they are. I think those of you who are saying thank you, I think really what it is I'm probably saying what you're feeling and what you're experiencing, and saying it out loud. I think a lot of people are afraid to say, I need help. I'm overwhelmed. This is too much for me. And you know what? It don't be afraid to say it. You just write down everything. If you're at that point that you are desperately overwhelmed, write down every single thing that you have to do. All those, take this slide deck if you want to, and hand it to your board and go, guys, this is what's going on. I'm doing all this. I cannot keep up anymore. I need help. And it doesn't necessarily mean they have to go and hire anybody, because you could just get some outside consulting um, to help out, especially if you're in a very small firm and you're the one person who's compliance. As long as you've got that help, you can. So what's the AML reality? What is it that on the AML side, is it that we're actually doing? And I call it the 4Ds. We design, we document, we demonstrate, and we have to defend. And the design is you're designing your policies and procedures. And I said AML policies and procedures. And I did cover all regulatory obligations. Now, again, that kind of goes back to GDPR, consent management, data privacy regulations, FATCA CRS. Your policies and procedures might need to cover those aspects, those regulations. And so that's the reason why the all these roles, kind of these compliance obligations, do merge and kind of end up falling on the AML compliance officer, because there's no point in just having an AML onboarding, and then if you've got FATCA CRS, then a separate onboarding for FATCA CRS obligations, because that's just going to frustrate your client. and you don't want to do that. So what's required, what's acceptable for the industry, and what do your clients expect? And because this is in your design aspect of policies and procedures, your clients, and I'm going to use wire transfers as an example. If let's say you're in the banking industry, and I'm going to use Cayman as an example, you're working at a bank in Cayman, your clients initiate a wire transfer, and they expect it to land at its destination in an hour. Yeah, because this is the age of everybody wants things immediately. Well, what's happened in Cayman? You have the new Defense Against Money Laundering regime, where if there's any suspicion and before you can transact, you have to wait 7 days. We've talked about that in a Gray Matters episode. So, what do your clients expect versus what are your regulatory obligations? And you need to draft those policies and procedures to kind of consider that you might need to manage those client expectations and say, normally we can get it there in an hour or 3 hours or 24 hours. However, there may be instances that it could take longer. And of course, you have to do all this without tipping off. That's that personal liability as well. Then you have to document everything. I 20 years ago when I started in the space, there was if you can't document it, it didn't happen. And that documentation is everything from your risk assessment of your clients when you're onboarding, to your policies and procedures, to your escalation procedures, to who does what. That's that evidence. And of course, then you have also document retention. How long? Where is the document stored? Is it a living document? When's it updated? Et cetera, et cetera. So everything's about documentation. And personally, I think that's the hardest part for many of us, is keeping the documentation updated. I don't know if anybody else, raise your hand if you feel like that's like one of the biggest challenges. I can read all the changes and stay abreast of the changes. It's then implementing the changes into my documentation. That's the hard part to me, because that takes focus, good writing skills. Yeah, a lot of you are giving a thumbs up. Keeping up with the documentation. Sorry, I didn't even like really go into that, and probably because that's the hardest part. Okay, so I'm going to pause real quick. Yeah, so everybody, lots of people are just saying it's very helpful. Yeah, thanks for recognition. Sometimes we don't get it. Yeah, absolutely 100%. Our job is very rarely validated. Yeah, see, somebody's asking, how should EDD, okay, enhanced due diligence. Yeah, that is a very specific topic about the documentation and with an enhanced due diligence. So yeah, so somebody's asking about enhanced due diligence, EDD, and that's just one of the many things that we have to document. You don't have to, and it's more than just documenting what's our policy for high-risk clients and what's our procedures for enhanced due diligence. But then for every single case, you have to go and document, what you did, why you did it. And yeah, so that's very, very difficult there. Then you have to demonstrate. This is what I call the performance phase. You have to demonstrate the effectiveness of your design and your documentation, and that's hard. And you're demonstrating it to not just the regulators and the auditors, you are demonstrating it to the board. And you're demonstrating that through metrics. And you're going to have to do some training as well of staff, and as well as the board itself. But yeah, that demonstrating in an inspection, I think many of us live and breathe for that inspection notice. That may come every 2 years or every 5 years, or I've spoken to some of you who says haven't had an inspection in 5 years, so you have a tendency to relax. Whereas some of you, depending on your industry and your jurisdiction, you're getting every 2 years. So that is that demonstrating is you're demonstrating, again, the effectiveness of your design and the documentation. And then you have to defend. You have to be the advocate for what you've designed. Again, and you are defending the methodologies that you put in place. And now I use country risk assessment as an example. How did you decide which countries are low risk, which countries are high risk? Because that's not an easy project in itself. And also, you have to defend it to senior management. Now, I use the word defend, and some people might, they think, oh, I have to be ready to fight. Consider that when you've got senior management and regulators and auditors questioning, don't be on the defensive. It's not necessarily you have to defend, you have to win. It is be open to comments and questions. I personally really like when somebody wants to try and poke holes in something because they might see something that I didn't see. So we're making it stronger. So you're working together to make it stronger. And so do not feel like if you have to defend your methodologies or defend your design or what you put together, again, just understand that if they see a hole, it's not a failure on your part. That's working together. That's collaboration. That is making things stronger. So that is perfect. You want that, and you want to welcome that. Going back to a few comments. Yeah, somebody asked, are you trying to talk us out of this career? No, I'm not. I really am not. I'm trying to help you understand and also not feel alone if you are having a hard time. And yeah, just to help you understand that there are different skill sets and different areas. So no, I'm not trying to talk you out of it. Yeah, somebody else is saying that the regulatory guidelines and updates are incredibly difficult to navigate and understand, especially when you're the only person. It can be, yeah, again, that's unfortunately, I don't have any, it is that case, yeah. And the shorter review periods with these mutual evaluation reviews, and yeah, you are at the mercy of the regulators, I'm afraid. I do wish there could be a bit more empathy for the human at the desk sitting in this role. Okay, so we've got 2 more slides and about 3 more minutes, so I do apologize. I can talk too much. Skills required for this job. You've got to have critical thinking skills. You've got to be able to question and ask and say, why is it this way? Why are they saying that? You've got to be pretty strong too in that critical thinking. Sometimes I will push back. I am not a regulator says I'm going to jump. It's okay to question and push back, but again, document very much is needed. When I started in this role 25 years ago, it was very administrative. And again, that was what I was good at, putting things in order and just kind of following the rules and document. That's what we did. I think obviously you do need that, but I think with technology, more of the routine administrative roles are going to be automated, and the future AML compliance officer really needs to just have that critical thinking skill set. They need to have the communication and writing skills, and there's 2 different styles of writing. There's that technical writing, and there's the legal writing. When it comes to legal writing, and I'm thinking specifically like if you're having to write a risk assessment and document on enhanced due diligence, I grew up or was educated in a way that's like when it came to writing, if you do not want it read in court or out in public, don't write it. And that is the best advice I can give you when you are writing anything, whether it's an email, it's a text message, it's a WhatsApp message. Consider, do you want it read in court? Imagine that, and then go, oh no, we don't want it. And this is not about anything other than like, I'll use this example. I once thought, gosh, this what this guy is doing. This is when I was MLRO. I was like, man, this just looks like fraud to me. And immediately realized, oh, I shouldn't be writing that, because if I say at one point it looks like fraud, but then later on I go, no, it's, actually I'm okay, let's go ahead and onboard them, and it blew up in my face, the fact that I had written, this looks like a potential fraud to me, or this looks like a fraud case, then that could have hurt me. I said, I can't tell you the experience because it never happened, but I ended up deleting that before I sent it. But it was one of those situations. You have to be very, very careful with what you are writing, and be brief with your writing. I don't do what I used to do. I used to write 10-page reports and realize nobody had time to read them. Technical writing, it's very different. Are you writing for developers, trying to tell them what they want? And one thing I am learning now is I have to write differently for AI. My prompts have to be very different with these tools. And we are currently writing testing an AI tool. It's basically going to be a chat bot. But how we download our knowledge into this chat bot, we have to write it very differently. We have to organize it very differently so that AI can understand it. So I have to write for humans, and now I have to write for AI to help it understand and what it is I'm writing, so it can then go and pull the information. You need to be able to, collaboration is also key. You have to work with legal teams, business, revenue generating teams, operations, the C-suite, that's the chief operations, CEO, board. You have to work with IT teams. You are not one person sitting at a desk all alone. You do have to work and collaborate with these people and others. You have to be very detail oriented. You need to be aware of legal pitfalls, such as tipping off and client confidentiality, these nuances. You do need to have some technology proficiency. You cannot be completely old school, everything paper and pencil. You do need to work with technology because automation is critical going forward. And of course, project management. Being able to break projects down into smaller projects is key. All right, then the last slide here, I just want to move on to this last slide, because the certification investment. This is, I think many of us ask ourselves, do I need to go get certification? And I am not trying to say you must go get ACAMS or ICA or FIBA or anything like that. There are different, and unfortunately I did have a slide, but I forgot to throw it in this one. Depends on your jurisdiction, if certification, which certification to go for. Depends on the industry you're in. So somebody's asking about FIBA Academy or ACAMS. If you're in banking, I would probably go with the FIBA Academy. I think ACAMS might be a bit specific. I'm not sure. I would ask a few people. Sorry, I don't know much about the FIBA Academy. I did my certification at International Compliance Association in London. Again, this was 20 years ago. It was in person. I liked that. I've seen a couple people do ACAMS virtually and then sit the exam. It was very tough, they said. But when it comes to certification investment, you really need to ask yourself, first of all, do you have the time? And what's the cost, and what's that return on your investment? That time away from your family, that cost that you spend, is it going to increase your earnings? If you're going for it and you're not going to get a raise after you complete it, or by your job or get the job that you need, yeah, it is. You need to ask yourself about that. Otherwise, you're just increasing your own workload. And it's also taking you away from other opportunities. Are you really going to learn? If you've got 10 years experience, you probably don't need certification, unless you want to go for specialization, i.e. fraud, auditing, proliferation financing, sanctions, that kind of stuff. That is, if you've got that 10 plus years and you're looking at certification for the first time, or you're looking at another certification, go for specialization as opposed to a general certification. The other question is it a regulatory requirement to have a certificate in AML and any kind of AML to get the chief compliance officer role or something like that? Or is it going to set you apart from other applicants to a role? That's when certification is needed. Also consider the market reality. Obviously, if you've already got the practical experience, certificates aren't going to get you the job if you've got the practical experience, unless it's more for the specialization. Also consider quality versus quantity. I have seen this where people, they get their undergraduate, they get a bachelor's, they get a master's, they get another master's, and they get a certificate, and very little job experience. So remember that, and this, I feel sorry for young people who've been told, oh, you have to have all these, you have to have a bachelor's and a master's, and then they do that, they did what they were told, and they get into a job market where nobody's hiring. So it is just get into the field some way. So when should you invest in the certificate? If you're trying to get into the field, if it's a regulatory requirement, if you want to go into a specialization, and if you want to have any kind of leadership or career growth. Okay, so that is, I'm going to leave this slide up. That's our last slide. I'm going to go back to our comments, and somebody's asking, writing for AI. I said that's interesting. Yeah, it is. I'm learning it. Sorry, I don't have any tips yet, so we're trying to figure it out. Tom, I don't know. You might even have some tips later. FIBA is challenging to complete. So somebody has obviously gone to the FIBA Academy. That's FIBA. I think it is definitely more. Yeah, somebody else is writing. It's definitely more banking focused. ICA and ACAM's content is much wider. Yes, I see that. I have the experience with ICA, and I've seen the manual for ACAMs, and they are kind of a wider, more generalized. CAMS is a lot of information. Somebody's writing CAMS is a lot of information to remember. It's very time consuming. For those who are studying the CAMS, I have heard that the classroom time is spent on the recommendations a lot, the FATF recommendations, whereas the exam spent a lot of time on digital assets, and they weren't as prepared. They did pass, but they found it very, very tough. Yes, ACAMS does have lots of conferences and webinars. Somebody writes, FIBA is great for entry level and even as a refresher, and their conference is also very good for networking and meeting new vendors. Yeah, I've been to the FIBA conference. It was years, and ACAMS. Both of them are really good. Somebody's writing AML-FC. Oh, what does that stand for? AML. If you don't mind, Marie, tell me what AML-FC stands for. There was another one too that was like just on sanctions that I thought was very good. It was in New York, and yeah, it was in New York, but it was just on the sanctions, because there were so many sanctions. And I think sanctions is not going to go away. We're going to be dealing with that a lot. Yeah, so AML-FC stands for Anti-Money Laundering and Financial Crimes Institute. Yes, thank you for that. So that they said that's also very good. That's a good substitute. So ICA, from what I understand, is more in Europe. ACAMS is more US focused. So depending on where you are, that is, which one might be more focused, and of course, what industry you are in is also key to which certification you go for, if you do go for one. Somebody's recommending recommend some certification for transaction monitoring. Oh, okay. Does anybody have any certifications that you've seen or heard about or obtained that are specific to transaction monitoring? I've got somebody asking for that. I do not have that experience myself. So if anybody can put that in the questions, certification for, sorry, so nobody's answered yet. So usually they're pretty good. Sorry, I realize we're at the 10 minutes past the hour, and I also wouldn't mind hearing about any certifications in the Middle East. Somebody is writing ACAMS, may have a foundation certificate. Somebody else write, yeah, ACAMS has a certification available for transaction monitoring. Somebody else is writing, are there any online sources which show or demonstrate policy creations? Oh, that's a good question. That show or like, are you talking about like how to create, are you drafting policy and procedures for the very first time? You've got nothing to start with. Is that what you're kind of asking about? Going back to the transaction monitoring certificate, somebody else writes that the ICA, that's the International Compliance Association, they cover a little on transaction monitoring. I don't know what area the person who's asking that, are coming from, what country you're coming from, but there might be some kind of like bank association that can help you out there. Okay, lots of questions coming in. Can you recommend a training to learn how to prepare EWRA/BWRA? The answer is no, because I don't even know what those are. what's EWRA and BWRA? What is that? If you don't mind explaining that. Yeah, transaction monitoring trading offerings are few, somebody else writes. I wonder why that is. Is it because is it constantly changing? Is it because it is about the vendor that you're using? That's I think that should be explored. Why is transaction monitoring training certification? Is it, maybe that's not understood? I'm going to look into that. Okay, yeah, EWRA, Enterprise-Wide Risk Assessment, or BWRA, Business-Wide Risk Assessment. Okay, so that's for what I call the group. When you've got different branches all over the world, how do you have one policy in place? Yeah, I don't have anything for that, unfortunately. And that is an area that I do know is growing because there's lots of nuances there. Oh, somebody writes, when you get good at monitoring transactions well, you stop the money flow. Interesting. I have to think about that one. Because I would hope that it would be the other way around. When you're monitoring transactions, the money can flow better because you're then spotting the real bad stuff, and not necessarily you're not just stopping the transactions if you do it well. So that could be the reason why certification is so difficult to find. Okay. All right. I think we're going to have to, yeah, it's almost 15 minutes past the hour. I do apologize for going over. I realize I couldn't get to everybody's comments and questions, but I do hope you found today's conversation useful, encouraging. I hope I didn't talk anybody out of this career if you were considering it. I just wanted to be realistic about what is happening in this industry, what you can expect, and how you can manage the overwhelm. Also, just to give you guys a bit of love and support. You are doing a lot, and your job is very, very valuable. I hope you get that kind of validation from your management. But yeah, it's a great job. I love it. I love this industry, and it definitely keeps me challenged, but I too get the overwhelm and feel the burnout at times, and you're not alone. So be resilient, be strong, be vulnerable. It's okay. Ask for help, and be proactive in kind of getting the help that you need. Don't just keep taking it on. Let your management know if you are overwhelmed. Let them know. that it's too much, and the risk is that you're going to miss something because there's so much. Explore these AI tools safely again as well. I do find that it helps me a lot. And thank you again for what you guys do. You are protecting your companies, protecting your industry, protecting your country. Uh, Again, very valuable job that you do in protecting the vulnerable in the financial industry as well. So keep at it, and I will see you next time. Tom, when is our next webinar? I did not put together the slide. I think it's in a week or 2 weeks' time. Is that correct?
Sorry, I was muted there. No, the next scheduled one is the 16th of July, AML
Six.
internal audit.
Okay. All
We
right.
have a
Fantastic.
senior manager from advisory in Grant Thornton, Cayman, Mr. Scott
Oh,
Lench, is
fantastic.
joining us.
Okay. Fantastic. All right. So 16th of July, AML audits. Preparing. That's again part of the job. So do join us. You can go to our website, silocompliance.com. We have an AML Gray Matters tab at the top to get recordings of old recordings, including this one, and slides. You can download slides, as well as sign up for the upcoming webinar topics. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Thank you for participating, sharing your comments and your thoughts and your questions. And again, thank you too for those of you who are saying you found today's session very informative and helpful. And again, stick with it. It's a great career. It really is a great career. And thank you, and have a wonderful day.